Hello, and welcome to the sixth episode of the Written Realms stream. Today's episode is going to be a little bit different from the others in the sense that we are not going to talk about coding or anything like that. We're gonna go through some gameplay. Basically, what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce the introduction. The formal title of this stream is introducing the introduction, walking through Written Realms onboarding experience, and I want to talk about how we think that new users come in and use the system, and sort of what we were going for in terms of what are they experiencing when they are trying to understand what the site is about, and in general we've tried to put a pretty big design emphasis on trying to make the game accessible to people who have never played MUDs before, who just don't know what that is, who don't have the experience of having been in a computer lab in the 90s and seeing someone playing a MUD or anything like that. And I'm going to try really hard to not speak from a point of view where I assume that we were successful. I don't know whether we were successful or not in this introduction, but we did try pretty hard, and there were several iterations of it, and I just want to talk honestly about what we were hoping to accomplish, at least, and kind of what our thought process was behind everything. The first thing that we really wanted to make sure to get right is that you would come on this page on writtenrealms.com. I'm going to run this locally just because I can show you things behind the scenes, and then I just don't like doing things on production if I don't have to. It's not totally rational, but I don't know. Given that I'm the guy who maintains it, I suppose I don't want to take risks. Anyways, so I'm going to run this locally, but it's the same site as production, and this is the first page that people get to when they get to the site. And up there is a single play button. You don't have to enter the site this way. You can also just hit sign up and then create an account, and then instead you will be taken to a lobby where you will see all of the available worlds like it is on production. Or you can just hit the play button. If you sign up, you won't be taken into any particular world. You will have to select which world to enter, and then create a character there. And before then, you'll have to enter an email address, a password, optionally choose a username. There's a lot of steps involved to a person initially coming to a site, and generally it's a huge turnoff. And we really wanted to make sure to only have kind of like one button. The challenging thing about that is that if you're creating a multiplayer world, which some would argue all MUDs are because it's in the name. I would argue that you can't have single player MUDs, but most MUDs are multiplayer, and that was certainly what we were going for as well. The problem when you just click a single button to enter without even so much asking for a name is that you don't know what to call this person in the multiplayer world. You don't know how else people are supposed to refer to him. You can have anonymous user 1, anonymous user 2, anonymous user 3, but I mean, that doesn't look great, right? So we wanted to create a space where new users could come in and experience the game at their own pace and with everything being in their proper place. So a traditional problem that multiplayer games have is that multiple people will enter the game at the same time, and let's say that people are supposed to walk through a particular hallway and then kill a monster at the end for some kind of learning. If two players come in, whichever first player kills the monster, that monster won't be available for the second player until a repop. And how is a new player supposed to know even what a repop is? How are they supposed to know that they're just supposed to wait or anything like that? So from the beginning, you need to sort of have something where you can silo people away from other people so that they can experience your game at their own pace and in an environment where you are controlling every aspect of exactly what they're going through at what time, and trying to control people through that is challenging. So to do that, Realms starting out as a multiplayer platform, we had to bake a whole functionality into the platform to allow certain worlds to not be multiplayer but be single player. Now, a single player world doesn't mean that only one person can be in it. You can have, well, at a time, yes, but you can have 10 different people playing the same single player world. They will just each be in their own copy of it, where they will not be able to see each other. and where all of their progress will be independent from someone else's progress. And so we did that. So when you click the play button, it's going to spawn a whole single player world where only you will be. And through that world, we try to step you step by step through the initial experience of the game, essentially. So I read an article a very long time ago, and I probably should have tried to look up what it was so that I can paste the link. I guess I'll try to do that after the stream. But it was about Super Mario, the very first one, and how it was designed for someone who had never played a game like that before, which was a very common occurrence when the first Super Mario came out. How did they learn how to play? And it essentially explained that every single situation that you are in Mario, where you enter the first Super Mario, before you can move to the next screen, you're going to have to learn one specific task. It'll be pretty obvious, but you'll have to learn how to do it, and that will be a foundation that then you build upon as you progress through the Super Mario introduction. So I always kind of had that as a goal, but it's sort of difficult to get to there. And there were several iterations of the introduction. The one you're seeing is, I guess, the second one, but even before there were sort of like initial world where we tried stuff out. But this is the second big iteration of the introduction, and I'll show you the first one afterwards. But I don't want to start showing you with what we didn't end up on. But I think it's interesting to see how we evolved and what we changed from the first version to the second. But I first kind of want to start with the finished product and then step through it and just talk about what I'm seeing. So the first thing that happens when we press this play button is, as usual, it's a demo, so something is going to go wrong. I had just tested something, so I removed a frame. So I have to actually reload this. Exit and then reload. Okay, fully reload. Cool. All right, let's pretend nothing happened there. So I will click the play button, and then this happens. So it's just a black screen with a little bit of text. Now, this is kind of a lot of text to throw at a new user. Typically, TLDR is sort of a real, I don't want to call it a symptom, but a real characteristic of users on the web these days. They don't like to read a lot of stuff. That being said, this is a text-based game, it's a text-based platform, and it's how it's promoted and how I talk about it, and I think anyone who comes into it expecting to read nothing would be a little bit disappointed. So I do try to put one little paragraph in there. One of the uses, but there's two uses of doing this. The first one is that they are exposed to very little. There's just a black screen and text, right? So they're not confused by UI elements left and right. The second is that loading the game, even a single player world, takes kind of like a second. And I wanted that sort of instant, like you click the button, boom, you're in it right away. So we pop this screen, and this screen is really just a modal that sits in front of the game that is being loaded. And when the game is loaded, you don't see that it happened, but it did. So when we click anywhere on this screen, it's just going to delete the screen, essentially, and you will only be left with what's behind it. So you are caught upside down in a sticky web of silk 3 feet off the ground. After looking around, trying to think of a way out of this predicament, you notice that your trusty boot knife has fallen to the ground. If you stretch your arm far enough, you might be able to pick it up and free yourself. Interesting points here. A lot of mods will tell you to never use you or here or anything that sort of implies anything about who your player is or what their mindset is. You shouldn't really ever assume anything about who's consuming your game. We really break this rule pretty hard here, right? Like we use you a lot, and I don't know if we use here, but we are very much breaking this rule, and we're doing it intentionally because a lot of players who have just never played this kind of game, they need that little anchor of like realizing that we are talking to them and that they are the one who are going to be living this experience. I feel that a lot of the rules that say like don't use you, don't use here, don't use anything seem, anything like that, already assume that the users are going to be somewhat familiar with that world and are going to have kind of like a initial buy-in and are just going to want to look around and explore each room as kind of like a scene in a painting. And sometimes, especially at the beginning, you want to be more memorable. You really want to typically things that that talk to the user directly, if it's overdone, it's bad. But if it's done a little bit, they'll just kind of remember it. And given this is the very beginning, we do it at the beginning and then we stop doing it. But for the first few interactions, we do refer to you and to here and to things that are happening. So click anywhere to begin. Let's do it. So the game has been loaded. There's already a lot more here. Ideally, I would rather that this whole left side just didn't show up. I would rather that it was black. And I think when we do the front end, I'll probably do that. But for now, it is what it is. So it has a bunch of information, but not too much, right? The map is not... There's only the one room, so you don't see any other room. There's really no concept of an exit yet. All we want to try to get across is that you're in a room and there's an item in your room, and that item is something that you can interact with. So for each screen at the beginning is only going to have one action that we want the user to take. And for this one, it's get the knife. The tricky thing about getting equipment initially is that you have to get it and then you have to equip it. And those are two actions. And we didn't want to have users doing two actions here. And you'll need the knife in the other step. You'll see the other step in a second, but it involves basically moving. And the first stab at this, I had people like wielding the knife before they moved, but that was two operations in the same room, and that was just a little bit too much friction, more than I would have liked. So what we did afterwards is we added a feature that is configurable per world, where if you pick an item and you don't have an item equipped in that slot, you're automatically going to equip it. And that's what's happening here. So there's this little action box, I guess, which bounces up and down, so the users understands that they're really meant to kind of come down here and they're supposed to do get knife. But also, if you just hover over it, then you will also see that this is something that can be interacted with get. And if you do, whether you hit the button here to click get or whether you type it here, it'll do the same thing, which is getting the item and then automatically equipping it. There's a second thing that we do here implicitly. So the first implicit action is we wield the knife. The second one is we are going to transport the user from the room that they're in to the next room. And the way that we justify that is we say that by picking up the knife, they then begin to slice through the silk. And that action creates a teleport, and that teleport is it's what we call a get trigger. And I don't know if I'll show them in this stream, maybe a little bit out of scope. But essentially, you can associate arbitrary actions to happen when you do certain things in certain rooms to certain items, basically. And this is one of them. So we say, if you're picking something up here, and if that thing up is this item, then go ahead and transport the user to this room, and then send them the following messages. So let's do that. We're going to say get knife. We get the knife, we wield it, is that feature I was talking about. And then we get a few echoes things. We're actually already in the next room. You can see that, like, even before all the text was shown, it had already changed from just a box to a box with a little line here. That line means that there is now an unexplored exit. And now this has now changed from enter get knife to enter look or L. And in here, we're trying to teach the user the look command, which is a very, very important command that you end up using all the time. So we want to make sure users get it. And we're also teaching them here that typically for every command, there's a shorthand to that command. So you can type look or you can just type L. And if you type LO, it will also work. It's a continuous aliasing system, basically. So we're going to do that. We're going to enter look. Oh, and if you don't enter look here, any other action that you enter, like trying to, well, not any action, but it won't let you do things like exiting the room, essentially, until you've entered that command. And that's a feature called command checks, where it won't let you enter any command that is of type move unless a certain condition has been satisfied. And in this case, the condition is entering the look command. So that's how that's built. So we do look, and after we do look, we've seen the room that we're in, which we hadn't seen before, and now we can go south. And we're still telling the user that that's what we have to do. They can go south, and we are reinforcing the learning from the previous step that they can do south or they can just do S. So now here they are presented with their first thing to kill. And killing in this platform is something that users do extensively. So we want to introduce them to how to do it, basically. And so, again, we're reinforcing you can do kill or you can do K. And again, if we hover over it, we'll try it for this one. Instead of tapping in, we'll do the action. It will do it, and then we will be able to go east. We cannot, in this case, go either north or east until we've issued the kill command. Actually, I think that's a room check. I think we can. I think I can show how that's built. Let me see. Let me go to the new world editor. In the cave, let me edit that. So I'm in this room. I believe it should show a room check here. Fantastic. Okay, cool. So this is a feature that's available to everyone in the world editor, where this is the concept of a room check. And a room check essentially inherently prevents an action. So you either prevent people from entering or prevent people from leaving. There are no other types of prevent right now, but we could potentially add some someday. And the prevention happens based on one of these conditions. So you can prevent things from happening if someone is not carrying something in inventory, if someone doesn't have something equipped, if someone doesn't belong to a faction, or if someone's health is not below a certain thing. And you can provide a direction of the prevention. So in this case, we're preventing people from exiting east only, which makes me wonder why is it that they can't enter north. Maybe there's a bug there, but the intent is that it should only prevent them from exiting east. And the argument in this case refers to the ID of the mob that has to not be present in order for the prevention not to take place. There's a lot of double negatives, but it basically means check for this mob ID and only let the person go through if they're dead. Argument 2 is used for some other things, like for example, faction below, where in the first argument you'll specify which faction, and the second one they're standing within that faction. So for example, you can deny entrance to someone who's high up in your faction and disallow it to someone who's lower. Okay, so that's how that works. And we're going to hover to do this, so we're going to say kill. When we do kill, when we type the button, it echoes the text equivalent of the command here. It says, kill spider. We are trying to teach to the users here that all of the UI commands that they do always have a text equivalent. We really try pretty hard to respect the fact that we are a text-based platform and a text-based game, and that therefore everything can be done through text first. The other interesting thing to note here is that this mob does not fight back. The point of that is just to not make the users feel too threatened and to not see any of the red color that kind of indicates danger, and for them to just see that they're just attacking something and it's just kind of like less information thrown at them. I think a lot of mods to new users, they're just going to throw a ton of text their way because they're like, well, it's a text game, they got to read a lot. Yes, but you have to, I think, get there step by step, I think. So in this case, we just start with a mob who doesn't fight back. And the way that you do that is you set the mob to be passive. So if we look at the mob here, this is the small spider. Its aggression level is set to passive. So aggression can be passive like that. It can be normal, where normal means that it will follow the rules of whatever factions that it has. So if you create a mob that is an orc mob and you're a human player and you set his aggression to normal, the orc will try to attack you. If you set the mob's aggression to players, then it will attack all players always, regardless of their faction. So it essentially makes them aggressive to all players. And if you said all, they will attack everything. Anything that enters its room, regardless of whether it's a beast or a human or what faction it is, it's just going to attack it. So those are the levels. And passive is useful if if you want to have things like so mobs who don't attack back, right? If you want to convey that you have a really, really weak mob who's just so helpless that they can't even fight back for themselves, that can be sometimes if you're building a quest where there's like someone who's cruelly asking you to kill someone who's very weak. That's a good way to convey it. Make it so that that person can't even fight back and you're just wailing on a poor defenseless person. That might make the user think about, well, why did this person have me attack this person if he couldn't even defend himself? So that's an option that's there. Okay, so now a few things happened. The spider died, which was the first time, and then you gained some experience, and we wanted right away to show that when you gain experience, you can gain a level. And then when you gain levels, sometimes you gain skills. So I guess it's kind of a lot of things to happen all at once. But gaining skills is always going to happen as you gain levels. So we're kind of like setting that expectation that going forward, this is going to happen. And then we show this skill now on the left, which we used to be hidden, is now shown because it wasn't available, is now shown because it is available. And you'll see that there's a little 1 here. That's a hotkey. So all skills that enter here have kind of like a built-in alias where now every time I do 1, it will always do bash. You can override it. You can say alias 1, say hello, and then instead it will do that because it will always read your aliases first. But by default, it does the ability. Right now, 2 doesn't do anything, but as soon as I get the second skill, 2 will become that skill. So far, so good. So now these exits are no longer blocked. I can actually exit here. And when I enter this room, I'm going to get attacked without me actually doing anything to attack it. This is the first example of an aggressive mob. This mob is just going to try to kill you as soon as you enter. You can use an ability for him for the first time, which will really help in defeating it. And this mob is also would not let you continue unless it was dead. And let's take a look at how that's done. So we're in this room right now. There's a room check here, which is the same one as before, where we're saying if this mob is still here, then prevent exit. And the ID of the mob is 200. And if you are prevented, then display the message that the young spider blocks the way east. Okay? And when you get to the next room, we try to write the room description to be pretty ominous, and also it's the first instance of a down exit, right? So we were hoping to convey that like you're kind of going down something and there may not be a way back necessarily, like a lot of jumps are, and we even try to spell it out where we say that, you know, loose gravels would likely be a one-way tumble. And again, usually people tell you don't do that, because if a user enters this room, how would they know that it's going to be a one-way tumble? They don't. This is us telling him something about where they are that they didn't discover themselves, right? And typically the rule is don't do that. But in an introductory setting, we break a lot of rules to help new users through. We follow them afterwards, but at first we break them. When I go down here, I'm going to be encountered with a big monster, a big level 3, I think, spider. Let me take a look. I think it's level 3. Yeah, it's this giant spider. And it's a tough spider, and we made sure that you basically you can't win against it. So your only option is going to be to flee from the combat. And of course, how would a user know to do that, right? Users don't know how to flee, and we wanted to make sure that users basically couldn't die in this introduction, because death involves taking you somewhere else, which is like a graveyard, and then from that graveyard you need to go back to wherever they were before, and there's not really a way to have a teleport to say like go back to wherever your last room was. Now that I think about it, that'd be a nice feature, so I'll think about adding that, but we don't. So we sort of just wanted to not have users go there, and so we built a feature which is configurable per world, which is auto fleeing, and where if your health gets below a certain level, you will automatically exit your room, and you will automatically flee. And what fleeing does is it makes you go randomly into a room of a different direction. And the neat trick that we're using here is the down exit is a one-way exit. So when you go down, you can only also go down. So you won't be able to flee back up because that exit won't be available. The only thing you'll be able to do is to go down. You actually don't even need to fight this spider. If you're going through the intro real quickly, you can just hit down twice and you will just go down and then run away from it really quick. And there's nothing wrong with that. If you did that, you're probably a sophisticated player who doesn't need to know about this stuff anyways. But so if you hit down, this spider is going to attack me. And it is very strong. So I'm going to bash it. I'm going to try to do my best here to kill it. It's got 100 health. You know, mine's already at like 30. It's hitting super hard. I'm hardly doing any damage to it. Boom. Your health is too low and you flee down. So, you know, there was also a flee action button on the spider, right? So that was an indication that you were able to flee. But in this case, we just made him do it. And here, we don't let users go north. We display a message to them that tells them that they need to be full health before exiting to the recovery room, and that they should try the rest command to speed that up. If they never do rest, eventually they'll get to full health anyway. But if they do rest, their health is going to regen a lot faster. And this is a mechanic that we use and that we like. It's going to stay. So we wanted to expose users to that kind of right away. And then also, we intend for that to be the mechanisms in all single player worlds as well. So any infirmary that you exit, you can't exit until you're full health. The reason being, you don't want a big damage dealer to die like right outside a cemetery and then, fighting someone who was fighting someone else who was also low. And then the second they die, they're able to come back in. And because someone else is buffing their target, now they can revenge kill them right away. We want a delay where they have to spend some time. And it doesn't have to be a ton of time because, regenerating your health doesn't take that long, but a little bit of time. So we wanted to introduce this concept here of the rest command, of the stand command, so you can go back up, because here, right, it won't let you do it. And how that is done is also with a room check. So going in here, this is still the role editor, so we went in here, we went one down, we came in here, and again, there's no up exit, so there's only one exit out of here, so we fled down here, and in here, there's a room check. That room check prevents exiting the room, and it prevents doing so if the health is below 100%. So that's where that argument comes in, where we say if the health is less than this, can't exit, not allowed. And if we prevent you from doing it, then we are going to show you this message down here, right? So those are room checks. Room checks, super useful. Use them everywhere. Now that we are back to full health, we can proceed north. And north is also a one-way exit. We try to convey that by saying that the platform is overlooking a steep drop-off, right? Steep, can't go back up it. And now you're underground on a different level, and there is a skeleton in your room. That skeleton is basically meant to be the remains of another adventurer who went through it, who tried to kill the spiders and who was not able to. And you fled from that first spider, right? You didn't win that fight. And of course, we're going to revisit that. The whole point of this is to teach you that equipping gear and learning skills and leveling up is how you become stronger into the world. So that, again, seems very obvious to a lot of people who play a lot of games. But the goal of Realms is to reach people who don't play mods and who, frankly, don't even play a lot of games, right? So we want to gently introduce them to all these concepts. If you click on the skeleton, this is the first instance of a container being in a room on the ground. This container has other things. It has three things, right? And there's this get from action, which will translate, well, I'll show you what it translates to, but it translates to get from all, essentially. And if you don't do that, you can't exit. So there's another room check in here. Many room checks in this little cave. Let me go to the room view, okay? Hup, room check. And the room check here is that you will be prevented from exiting if you do not have item 142 equipped. Item 142 is the sword. And the reason why we have that check and not the armor is because we already know that the armor is going to be equipped as soon as we loot this, because if you remember, we have an option in this world that whenever you loot something you don't have equipped, then it automatically equips it if you don't have something on that slot. The helmet and the breastplate, you don't have one right now. If you look at your equipment, you only have the weapon. So you're pretty guaranteed to have, well, you're completely guaranteed that if you loot this, you're going to equip them. However, we don't swap automatically something that you already have equipped just because you picked something else. If you have the best sword in the world and you just picked a trash sword because you just want to save it for someone else who's not very good, then you certainly don't want to swap your weapon automatically for that. So it only happens in an empty slot, which means the sword won't be swapped out for the boot knife. So this is a bit of a tricky thing where we thought about it a lot and we resolved it this way, that you just won't be able to exit unless you do it. And it will tell you type wield sword. Maybe I should say here type wield sword or WI sword, so you can see that there's a shortcut for it, because if you just do WI sword, it will work. So get from, again, clicking get from translated that action to the text get all skeleton, and you automatically equipped the two things that you did not already have as an armor slot, and this one you did not. But you still can't exit because you didn't do it. So now we're going to say we sword. We have the sword. You see our health went... There's a gap now because we just gained a lot more health. If we take a look at what this sword is, it gives you more damage in the form of pure damage and attack power, which translates to damage. And it gives you 30 extra health points, 25 extra crit rating, and then it helps you regen health faster. One health every every short tick, sorry. And those happen if you're out of combat. So it's actually a super good weapon. And initially, we wanted to really reward users for having gone through the intro, to give them a sense that if they got to the multiplayer world having gone through the intro, they're better off than if they had just created a new character. A side effect of that is that we've had people say that in the multiplayer world, when they start out and kind of create a new character, they're under-geared, right? Because we balanced it around people coming in from the introduction world where they're level 4 and already have these nice weapons and 2 pieces of armor. So when you create a new character at level 1 and you have no armor and a pretty bad weapon, then it was kind of making for sort of a suboptimal experience. So what we ended up doing is we upped the starting gear of level 1 character. So they're still not quite as good as the level 4 gear up person you get there, but they're better than they used to be. Anyways. So now we exit, and now there's another spider. It's actually the same spider, I believe, as earlier. And you will notice that you just kicked the shit out of it. Like, you really destroyed it very, very, very quickly. And let me double check that it's the same spider. I believe it is. It's a fanged spider, which is the level 2. And then earlier, let's see, how do I get back to the upper world? Here, I think it was here. So this was the aggro spider. Pretty sure it's the same. Yeah, same spider. So the purpose of this is hopefully you remember how much faster you killed this lesser spider than the first time around. The first time around, like, you could still kill it if you didn't use bash. We made sure of that, but it's kind of close. If you don't use bash, you'll get kind of close. This one you just obliterate it. So hopefully this demonstrated that now by having this armor and this new sword, I'm doing much better, right? So still trying to do the one room, one teaching thing. This is the first room really where kind of nothing happens, and that too is a teaching, that sometimes there are rooms where there is nothing to do but read the description and go to the other room. So you do that, and then you encounter your first humanoid mob. And this person says something when you enter the room, which looks a lot like help, right? And if you hover over it, you see something called cut web. So there's a lot actually that goes into this, because the idea is this is someone who's on the ceiling in like a cocoon of silk, and then when you need to free them somehow, and then when you free them, they will drop to the ground, and now they will no longer be a small person wiggling in a webbed cocoon. They will now be a full person sitting in a room. There is not currently a way to alter a mob's room description, so we actually had to do some trickery to make that work. And this is the first instance of a quest. This is the first quest that users encounter. It's kind of a special one, but it is really just a quest. So I guess the first thing that I should do is show what this quest looks like. So let's do that. There's only 2. There's cut down the boy, and then he asks you, you'll see, to go kill the spider. So let's go look at this one. So this quest has no particular objectives. All you have to do is complete it. And it has no inquire message. So usually the way that a quest works is you go up to a mob, and then you essentially ask him, what should I do? And that's the inquire command. And the mob will tell you, these are the things that I'd like you to do. So it's very clear. Once you have gathered the things the mob wanted, like a piece of, the scalp of someone or some jewelry or something, then you will complete the quest, and you will do that through the complete command. If when you enter the room, you are eligible for that quest and have not done it yet, you can define an inquire entrance command, which are commands that the mob is supposed to execute when someone enters your room who has not completed a quest that they are eligible for, which is what we're doing right now. We're entering the room, we're eligible for the quest, of course, and we definitely haven't completed yet, so it says, help. All you need to do here is click the enter complete, because there's a command called complete, which will attempt to complete any quest that a mob in your room has that you are eligible for. The thing is that if you go up to someone who is trapped in a silk cocoon on a ceiling, the name of the command you want to enter is not complete. I mean, it will work, but that's not intuitive. No one is going to understand what that means without seeing the more full context of the quest. So this particular quest defines things that we call completion actions. And completion actions are essentially command aliases so that you can use something other than complete to complete the quest. So in this case, if you type cut web or cut webbing or cut silk or slice web or slice webbing or slice silk or free victim, all of those will be commands that will work to resolve this quest. So it's kind of a way to define custom commands so that there's some uniqueness to users completing your quest, essentially. And you can also make the completion command not available, so then they are forced to use like some other command to complete it rather than complete. So you can even push the immersion one step further. So that's what we're doing here. So first I'm going to do it, and then I will show you, we'll see what happens, and then we'll walk through how that worked. So I'm here, I'm going to, does it actually work? I might try the one that does, it doesn't. So we're going to say cut web. And by the way, I added these based on what people told me they tried. So every time I had someone saying, hey, I tried this, it didn't work, I added it as a command alias. Some good heuristics there. So I'm going to say cut web. Right away, I complete his quest. I gain experience. We are teaching that you can gain experience just by completing quests, even if you don't kill anything. And then the event happens. You slice the webbed cocoon, and a boy drops from the gash in the silk, covered in slime. Probably should put a comma here, right? Because the silk is not covered in slime, it's he who is covered in slime. The scared boy looks around, eyes wide with fear. Where did it go? That horrible monster. I thought I was going to die. Please, I just want to go home. The south boy looks south and trembles. It might be best to come back get him. I need to fix that. I will. It might be best to come back and get him, or to get him, once the giant spider has been killed. The other thing, so he did that, completed the quest, but also, this is actually now a different mob. It's the same level, but the description is different. Now there's actually a description. You see that his hair is disheveled, that it parts around his head, and that he has an anxious face. And there's now this inquire command. This inquire command will just repeat all of that. But before I explain the inquire command, I want to explain how is it that we replaced one mob with another. That's all in the completion command. So completion commands are commands that get executed once the user completes the quest. So the first thing that he does is he does an echo command. Echo will just write something to the screen exactly how the argument is. So rather than it being a command where the boy does something, it says that like you slice the web cocoon, but everybody would see that. So if you do echo in a multiplayer world, everyone would see you slice the cocoon even if they weren't the person actually doing it. So echo should be used kind of carefully. Where the only reason why it's accessible to do it here is because we're in a single player world. And then you can chain multiple commands together as part of like one same operation that will be executed sort of one right after the other. What we're doing here is this is a builder command that mobs also have, and this means go invisible. So the mob at that point, this mob is no longer going to be visible to players. It will still be there in the room, but the look command will not return that mob. So for all intents and purposes, it won't be there, even though it still will. It will still be able to run commands though, which is why it will still be able to run these commands. So here's the interesting thing that happens here. We make the first boy who was in the ceiling invisible, and then we load the second mob. So a mob has access to the load command, which builders use to load mobs when they're not defined by loaders. So the one mob loads the other mob, and then the first mob, who was the one in the ceiling, he's still in the room actually, but he's invisible. He also has access to a command called the force command. And so now that first mob is forcing that second mob to do stuff, right? So he's forcing a mob that force is a command, is a builder command. You can, when I'm in Unbroken World, I can walk up to any mob on my builder character and say, force soldier say, it is nice to be here. And now the soldier will say, it is nice to be here. So in this case, the invisible boy still on the ceiling is forcing the boy that is down on the ground to emote that he is looking around, eyes wide with fear, right? So this is actually it's a command that's being run by a mob that you can't even see anymore, okay? It continues to do that, so it makes it say, where did it go? Please, I just want to go home. Go south and tremble. And then we just shoot this mob out of there. So we move him to room .2, and room .2 is the room right before you kind of like go down and you can't go back anymore. In other words, it's inaccessible. So if I were to go in here and use a builder character and then jump back to room 2, I would actually see that invisible mob, even though he'd be invisible, but that mob would be there. And I might even be able to target it. I would have to try that. But either way, that mob would be there. So the last step here is we're getting that boy who is on the ground. We're finally actually properly moving in from the room. And now the only mob that is left is this other mob. So if you look here, there's one mob for the victim who's on the ceiling, and there's one mob for the boy. The boy has different descriptions, right? And the boy also has a quest. That quest is kill the spider. And if you click on Inquire here, it will just repeat the same thing. It repeats basically like this. Just so that, like, you've already been told what to do. So the only reason you're doing an Inquire is if you're just kind of testing things and trying to see how things work, and then we're just repeating. We're saying, you've already been given your instructions. Go and kill that spider. So this is the same giant spider that you saw before, right? But now you are better equipped, and you are level 3. So you're higher level as well. So we go up, and then this is meant to be a little bit ominous, like there's no visibility, you don't know what you're going to walk into, blah, 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 blah. And then you enter this, and now it is the same exact spider as before, but now you have some abilities, right? So you're going to counter that, and then you're going to bash it, and you're going to kill this spider. For sure. Because you're doing slightly more damage to it than it's doing to you, and you could even kill it, I think, if you didn't use skills, if you're a high enough level. But yeah, you're definitely going to kill it. So you kill it, and then you get to level 4. So level 4 is a big level because it introduces the concepts of feats, which are character customizations where you have to make a choice. You have to kind of pick which skill you want. And much like equipping the first item when you get it, in this case we automatically assign a feat to you as you kill this monster. So if you use the feat command, you will see that reinforced plating has already been selected. And this is just because we know that people just don't read the stuff that we write and that we would hope that they would write. We would like them to, but they just don't. So just in case, we didn't want them to be kind of gimped and to not have this feat. So for the first one, we just automatically assign it. I don't believe we do this for the other feats. I'd have to check, but I think this is only for the first one. Once you get to level 8, because feats are every 4 levels, you have to learn it yourself. Or I don't think you'll... I could be wrong about this, but I don't think so. Talking makes the throat very raw. I've really noticed that before. Okay, so now we can go back to the boy. And this is optional, actually. If you want now, you can just get out. You wouldn't have been able to go south before. there is a room check on the spider that prevents you from exiting unless the spider has been killed. Exiting south. I wonder whether this means that it prevents fleeing from this fight. That's a good question. I don't think so from what I recall, but I should test that. I'm curious. I'm definitely curious. But either way, that room check is I don't know why I keep going to this. Let me close this. That room check is now satisfied. You know why I keep going to it? It's like a nervous tick. It's like a habit. I always go on Discord and I can't help it, right? Anyways, okay, so I go here and now now you see that the boy looks at you with wide eyes, right? And he's doing that because you killed the spider. When we went back before to look at him, he wouldn't have done anything. The reason is that the scared boy has a quest, and that quest has something called a completion entrance command, and that is the same thing as the inquire entrance command, except rather than it being displayed if you enter the room and you're eligible for the quest but you have not completed it, it displays if you enter the room and you have completed it. So it's commands that are meant to be executed before you hit the complete command, but like when you could, from the moment that you could. The objective for this quest is to kill the spider, and given that we just killed the spider, we're not eligible for completion, and so we saw this little thing where it just says looks at you with wide eyes. All we have to do now is enter the complete command. And for this one, there is no additional command, but it's also clear that it's a quest because he specifically asked you to do something, I hope. And if you hover, you can still see that you do complete, but that is in fact the only way to complete that quest. I'm trying to think. Another way that we could do it is via completion trigger. So if I were to add here the word dead, then me saying the spider is dead would complete the quest. And I probably should do that, honestly. I usually rewatch these episodes to see what I did wrong, and then I write notes, and I'll probably do that here, that this is something that would be an improvement. It really helps talking through stuff to see how it could improve. It's great. Even if there's nobody on the stream, it's still very useful to me. So I will keep doing this. Okay, so I complete it. I gain more experience, pushing me a little bit closer towards level 5. So now he has hopefully an endearing reaction where he's generally relieved that the spider is dead. And now we introduce you to another concept, which is that he's following you. And the game being primarily multiplayer, you can follow other players and group with them. In fact, I could not group the boy. Well, that's buggy. I should be able to group him. Let's not dwell on this. But now everywhere I go, he's going to follow me. He's going to follow each of my footsteps, which is, I think, kind of neat. You literally bring him out of the cave. And then there's a few more monsters here that you can kill if you want. They're fully optional. These are the first. So with this, we do counter. Oh, there we go. But we only reflected 2 of them. That's weird. What happened there? We killed it in one hit? Oh, okay, I see. I entered, I hit it right away, and then... I see. I just got like... I got the initial round in, and the next combat round happened pretty quick. So this is not the output of counter. This is just like the complement to this. And then the counter happened afterwards, and only on 2 of them because there were only 2 who were alive. So it actually worked out pretty well. So all 3 spiders are dead. There's one more set of spiders that you can kill. Yeah, so now we've killed both spiders. So now I'm going to exit the tunnel, and when I exit here, you'll notice that these 2 rooms were already open. We're already on the map, rather. Usually when you enter, things are kind of like discovered. And this was meant to sort of encourage the user to go south now because they're almost out. They're out of the cave. They're out of the darkness. They can see a little bit of perspective. It's a little bit of a lie in terms of game mechanics, but they've seen plenty of times now that, like, before they see a room, they can't see it. And there are cases where you see rooms without having discovered them. An example is all water rooms are automatically assumed to haven't been seen because we sort of assume that people know the rivers, the worlds that they inhabit, or whatever. I mean, you could argue that they don't, but that's a design decision that we made early on. And you can have any other room be a landmark room. That's what we call them. Those are rooms that are automatically in people's maps when they start the game. There's no, like, fog of war or whatever. So these two rooms are a landmark room, and this is the first time you see green, which hopefully will make you want to go to this outdoor area. So it's in a lush forest with lots of green everywhere, and then just to the south is a road. So this is the first time you see the road color. When you get to the road, we are basically going to say, okay, now you're going to the village. The first version that we had of this actually took you along all of the road basically to get to. I'll show the previous intro after this, but you essentially had to go down the road a little bit to really get near the village because we were trying to do more continuity so that the single player world, the intro kind of resembled the structure of the real bigger world, but it was just too much. They've already gone through the exercise, they've killed the spider, now they've exited the cave. We're just going to drop them in the village as soon as they go south, essentially. So we go south here, and then this is the moment where we actually do need to start gathering data from this user because they're now done with the introduction. So this is technically the end of the introduction. They have completed this adventure. They have won the introduction. So now we need a user account for them because we're going to pop them in the multiplayer world, and we need to know what user account that maps to, and we're going to have to get a character name. So this is going to be a couple of steps, right? So it's a little bit of friction, more than just a single sign up, but it's kind of like we're paying the debt of having saved them that work so far. But we have to do it at some point. So I will do Teebs plus intro test at gmail.com. I will enter a bogus password, and then I will say Teebs test. And then you sign up. After you sign up, you're taken to a second screen where you have to pick a character name because now we're going to put you in the multiplayer world. And I guess this is probably one thing where we could be a little bit clear. It's always hard to... You want to be clear, so you want to explain a lot of things to the user, but the users also don't want to read a lot of text, even MUD users. So, you want to explain, but in the end, you really don't want to do that. You want to say as little as possible. So we erred on the side of doing less here. One note here is that we're not defaulting to male, which most games would do. And there's two reasons for that. The first one is alphabetically, female comes before male, so there's at least one good reason why female should come before male. But then also, the gaming world is overwhelmingly dominated by men, and there's nothing wrong with that, but it does bring, it is nice to play with more diverse people and to get to know different kinds of people, and MUDs are a kind of game that traditionally have sort of attracted more girls than a lot of kinds of games. I met my wife on a MUD, for example, and I'm hardly the only example of this. And I mean, I don't know why that is. I don't want to start speculating, but there is unquestionably a certain appeal of the medium for women compared to other game mediums, and so we want to encourage that, right? So by default, you're a female. If you want to change to male, you can, but here we won't. We're just gonna name a character Joan, save. This is taking a little bit because I'm running this locally and I don't have the multiplayer world booted up. So this would be quite, not instant, but it would be very fast on production. It's a little bit slow here because I have to load all of the Unbroken World into my local machine. And the Unbroken World is starting to be relatively large. Or not large, but it's medium minus maybe. And so yeah, it takes just a minute. So we're just waiting for this to complete. Okay. Yeah, it was showing that it would have sent them the confirmation email, so at this point we're asking them to confirm things. Interesting. Something was supposed to happen here which did not happen. This elder here, let me show you. This mob has something that's called a reaction, which is a concept that we use a lot in world building. So let me take a look at the elder. This is the village elder. Yeah, so she was supposed to have that. Very strange. So she's supposed to react to a connect event, which is what happens when someone connects to the game. And then she's supposed to say these things. And the reason is, I want to tell the users right away when they enter this multiplayer world that I want them to get the quest that tells them to kill deer. I want them to get that the first thing they need to do is to go to the forest to the north and kill deer. And the starting village has gone through a few iterations, and I relayed it out recently to kind of to help orient users towards where they're supposed to go. So in here, if you go west, you enter an inn where this innkeeper has a quest for you. And then if you go here, this cook also has a quest for you. There's a lot of quests in this running village. You can go up here if you want, but then you're kind of done. You have to go back the way you came. Okay? You can't like keep exploring this forever. So when you go back in, then you can go north or you can go east. Let's go east. There's another quest here that the quartermaster tells you that he wants to do. And this is the quest to go kill the deer pelts. Right, bring me 4 deer pelts. That's it. So when you go back here, you know that going west and going east does not bring you anywhere you haven't been before. The only real place you can go is north. And given that people tend to sort of repeat the initial direction they went on, that north direction turns out to be the path to the forest. And in fact, as soon as here you start to see, I mean, not necessarily, because these mobs are random, but there starts to be some bucks and some does and stuff to kill. The forest is up here. So starting in a T like this, where both branches are dead ends, and the north takes you straight to where you need to go, I'm trying to encourage users to enter that way. I'm trying to figure out right now why this mob's reactions are not firing off, because they should. So typically, when you enter this room, if you're not wearing a particular piece, if you've not complete, that's what it is. If you haven't completed the quartermaster's quest, then the elder is supposed to tell you, hey, you don't look so good right now, you need some better gear. Go talk to the quartermaster. And that's not working, and I don't know why. So I will have to look into that. But once you get started, you come up here and you start to examine the forest a little bit. And I suppose I will extend this because we're out of the introduction now. We've done all of the intro. Now we're on to the multiplayer world. I guess I'll talk through the first few levels of the multiplayer world and how that works. So sheep are pretty weak at this point. You can kill them pretty easily. Computer's lagging a bit. I think that the game plus the streaming, that frame rate or whatever, is a little bit more than this computer can handle. So Doe's going to be too hard for me. No, Doe might be okay actually, especially if I start with Bash. Try. Oops, Bash Doe, not Bash. 105 health to my 98. Let's see. I mean, I'm hitting it so much harder than it's hitting me. There's no problem. I'm going to kill this Doe. So it's kind of nice. I'm right out of the intro and already... There's no auto fleeing here, so you will die if your health hits 0, which currently there's not much of a cost to it, but could be someday. So loot is the command to it's an internal alias, which then resolves to get all essentially, and then loot all means get all that corpse. They're aliases, so loot all is the same thing as doing get all dot corpse. Let's start with a bash. We'll follow it up with a counter. I don't know if I can kill a buck at level 5. I think that'll be too hard. It's hitting me too hard. Yeah, I can't kill a buck. So I have to try to find another doe, I guess. Because the stag will be even harder. Right, let me get my health back. We'll kill the doe. This is chain completion, so you can chain one command with another. You can do L, semicolon EQ, and it'll do L followed by EQ. So if I do that, it will stand and then it will kill it. Use hotkeys. So I need 4 deer pelts. Looted it, right? Yeah. Buck is too hard for me. Oh, the wolf is definitely too hard for me. Alright, let me kill this buck. I'll have 2. I'll see 1 more. Not complete the quest. I do wonder why this woman's reactions are not working, though. Neither of them worked, huh? That's interesting. That is very interesting. You can really see the lag in the animations, huh? I don't know if you can hear on the stream, but my fans are going. They're definitely going. Alright, come on, I just need 1 more doe somewhere. Let's take out... Ah, a doe. Wunderbar. Probably level me too. Yep. And I get a new skill, Ravage. Fantastic. That will really help, actually. Okay. So, I go back to the village. Still no reaction. You, Elder Slacker. So now I can complete this. Because I have 4 pelts. So for the 4 pelts, I'm going to get a piece of armor. Which I can sell, or in this case, I'm going to wear it because it'll be a big upgrade. So this is not a great piece of armor for me because I'm a warrior, and this gives dexterity as well as mana regen. Neither of which I really need. I mean, dexterity helps a little bit because that gives you more crit. Mana regen definitely doesn't do anything for warriors. But I'll still wear it. But the interesting thing is, this item was randomly generated. So the stats on this will be different each time that you complete the quest. Let's take a look at how that works. Why am I down here? Oh, probably because I was browsing some mob. Okay. Let me go back. here. Look at the quests. These are all the starting quests of Bluefinch. There's a good amount of them. And right now we want the Quartermaster quest, the Deerpelt quest. So this is the quest. So first we have an objective where we say that we want 4 Deerpelts, and this is how we specify that. And as a reward, we're going to get a level 7 120 light armor. What this means is that it will be a random item, as one random item, as specified by this random profile. And we can look at this random profile. Or not. Oh, Christ. Really? Yeah, okay, well that's broken. But essentially, if that screen were not broken, what it would show is that this has a 100% chance of spawning an item that is of at least imbued quality, level 7, and that has a 20% chance of being enchanted. And an enchanted item has a slight boost over enchanted items. I think it's like, I forget exactly what it is, but it's something like 20%, I think. And so the reward for this will change each time we do the quest, right? And in this case, we got a pair of cuffs, which I guess go on arms. Yeah, so now we have something on the arms. But it's random. We could have gotten anything. So users can now start farming Deerpelts, which will be far easier at level 5, in exchange for Deerpelts. See how much stronger. Can we kill a buck now? Let's take a look. I think so. This wolf is tough though. No wolf. Okay. So we're gonna open with a bash. So what does Ravage do? Ravage basically gives you like a certain amount of time during which it's a channeled spell. So it starts and then you cast it until you're done, and every second while it's going on, it does about 75% of the attack damage that you would do. So usually you attack for 2 rounds, and then you do 100%. Right? Usually you attack every 2 seconds and you do 100% damage. Here, you're going to do 75% damage 3 times in 3 seconds. So it's more damage, right? But it's something that while you're ravaging, you can't do something else. So it's not like a boost to your regular attack. It's a channeled ability. So we're going to start with Buck, Bash Buck, okay? Then we're going to counter him as soon as he's out of stun. And we're going to ravage him. Why are those bucks so tough? That's a little harder than they should be, really. I'll still kill it. I guess Ravage comes back. But I mean, it's kind of dicey. I think I'll win, but it's going to be close. I could have gone down on like 1 or 2 hit points, but I didn't actually die. And I killed the buck. So, good news is now I can do it, though I do need to rest a little bit. Ooh. Interesting. I will investigate that. That is interesting. Loaders didn't want to run on this one. Okay, I wonder if it's related to what I just did. No, I hadn't seen them there before. So Bluefinch has all kinds of quests like this. So the Quartermaster is one. This wolf pelt is part of this guy's quest. Let me take a look at that. Very, very similar concept. So he wants the pelt of a wolf, and if you bring it to him, he will give you a level 7 weapon, which will have a 100% chance to be imbued and a 20% chance to be enchanted. A regular item versus an imbued item, for equipment, for armor and weapons, the difference is that magical, which encompasses both imbued and enchanted. Magical items have extra stats, so they don't just give you armor, which all base equipment does, but it also gives you like plus Constitution, plus Strength, plus Intelligence. They're it's an item that basically like makes your stats better, so it's like a magical item. But so similar deal. You go to his room and you will see an inquire button. I believe he's here. You can try to kill him if you want, but I wouldn't recommend it. I do think that he assists. He was supposed to. This was one of the very first quests that we added. But yeah, so you do inquire, he tells you what to do, and then if you bring him back the wolf pelt, he'll give you a weapon. Pretty straightforward, right? So there's all kinds of quests like this in Bluefinch. Then there's multi-step quests, and there's several ways to do that. The first way that we usually do is we load a mob with multiple quests, and given that a mob can only respond to the inquire or the complete of one quest at a time, it will essentially like give back the first quest that the user is eligible for, and then once that user completes that quest, then he'll be eligible for the quest afterwards, so then that quest becomes eligible. And that's how we stack them. The other way, which is a more recent change, is you can say that a quest actually requires another quest to be completed first. So you can create now a more formal chain where you can have not the same mob be the chain, right? So you can have one mob that sends you to do something to another mob, and that mob continues that chain. You can do that. And we do that, in fact, for some quests that take you from the starting village, Bluefinch, to the first major capital city, which is Renice. And yeah, we do that there. So I think that's pretty good for talking through kind of like the initial introduction. How do we do things? At this point, you have a quest that you can farm, you have other quests that you can do, you have characters that you can go interact with and learn more about what's going on in the world. There's a delivery quest that we have that this guy gives you, this innkeeper gives you, where he gives you a bowl of soup that you have to go send out. And I believe that this quest uses a certain kind of condition where it will only be displayed if you are not carrying that object. I think that's right. No, I think it's if it's been issued at all. I forget. I think there's a way to reissue it. Maybe I meant to implement that, but I didn't. But either way, you go here, and then if you give her the bowl, then it just kind of completes her quest. If I recall, you can prod her for more on that. I don't really continue this quest right now. Like if you go and see the father, he just kind of bumbles or whatever. But the way that she does that Selene mob. So she has a couple of reactions where she will react to a certain word being said. So if you say Selene in her room, not his room, she will say, "Hey, that's me." She should. Maybe not because you've completed the quest. There might also be a condition on this reaction. So I would have to check. I've been building this for 6 years, and there are honestly moments where I just don't remember what all the features are because there's just too much code. But yeah, so it does work for this one though, where if you say incident, that might have been a reaction delay actually, where when some mobs have reactions, you can specify a delay where they don't do it again, essentially. because it gets really tired that you enter a room and then you exit and you re-enter again, and that mob is now kind of like repeating over his messages, and he's still saying like the second command, and now he's starting over the first command, and it ends up being this big jumbled mess. So that it could be why she didn't say Selene here. Has it been more than 10 seconds? Let's see. No, it must have. No, that wasn't it. But that is it for this guy. If you walk into his room and he tells you, or this cook, I walk in and he says, more button, right? If I exit and come right back in, he's not going to fire that reaction again, quite yet. And that's configurable. You can specify how long you want to wait before the reaction is fired again, but by default it's 10 seconds. So mobs will always at least wait 10 seconds before re-spamming you with something, essentially. But yeah, so this is kind of like the introduction and then the beginning of the multiplayer world. I want to go back and show through the old introduction that we had, now that I've shown kind of like where we ended up, and try to talk through what an earlier version was like and what we didn't like about it, because I think that's also pretty interesting. So, oh yeah, right, I'm on an anonymous user. This is what every user has access to these worlds when they start. The tutorial is another single player world where you're the only person in there, and so therefore we make sure that you go through a tutorial. This one's more literally one room teaches you everything. One room teaches you one thing, and by the time you're done with it, you've seen everything. But anyways, let me log on to my actual account, so I've got all of these ancient worlds still there. Okay. So the old introduction was called The Bane of Bluefinch. It actually started out with the Beast of Bluefinch. I didn't really know yet what the big bad thing was going to be. And initially I was going to have it be just some kind of a scary, very scary beast, like a big bear or something. And then I changed it to a spider. And for the longest time, the name of the world was still the Beast of Bluefinch, even though it was a spider. And I was like, wait a second. The spider is not a beast. It's an arachnid or whatever. So someone suggested just use Bane. So I did that. So the Bane of Bluefinch is very similar structurally to the cave. So it starts the same way, where basically, I have to be careful with this because we're now running into the new front end versus old front end. But so when I wrote this world, I've tried to have a bit of continuity between the single player world and the multiplayer world where you landed. There's already continuity in all your characters' data. So when you complete the introduction, you're taken to the multiplayer world. All the equipment that you got in the single player world is still with you. All of your quest completions are still with you. Everything that you did still mattered. And I was sort of trying to do that at a story level, and I was quite prescriptive with it. So with this one, I wanted to explain, well, why is this person in this cave? So they ended up in a webbed cocoon. How the hell did this happen? Like, what were they looking for, right? And so I was trying to explain the motivations behind everyone being there. I was trying to, if you think about like storytelling, as a lot of writers do, as like an iceberg, I was trying to kind of like also show not just the part above water, but also explain why these people are doing these things. So the whole idea was that there was a boy who had heard that there were disappearances, so he was trying to get to the root of, why had people disappeared, why had they gone to, and so he was kind of looking around the forest looking for an answer. And, upon entering the cave, he then passed out with his torch hitting the ground. And so I was already trying in the introduction paragraph. So this is what you see when you click the play from the front page. I was being a little more prescriptive, right? I was saying, rather than the current one where we're just saying that you were trapped 6 feet above or whatever, we're saying that you are a young adventurer and you're tracking down disappearances in a farm west of your cabin. So I was trying to establish that all the stuff that was going on was to the west, and where you came from was to the east, right? While exploring the forest, you venture into a creepy cave tucked behind a mossy waterfall. after taking more than a few steps, this is the same after that. After taking no more than a few steps into the damp space, your vision becomes blurry and your head groggy. And as you slump into the ground, the last sound you hear is your torch hitting the wet ground. So it was meant also to... There's a whole mechanism in this you'll see where you're not meant to enter rooms where you don't have your torch lit. I was trying to introduce this concept of light and darkness to players. But the platform as a whole right now doesn't have light and darkness. You can't really have dark rooms that you can't see in unless you have a light. That's just not a thing. So I was sort of introducing a mechanic in the introduction that was then not being followed in the multiplayer world. It was kind of a false promise. So that got dropped. But let me go back to that world if I can. So this is the room that you start into, and these have a similar room checks as the other one. Let me see if this still works. I'm not sure if it will still work, honestly, but let's try it. Let's create a Tibo character in here. Let's see if this still works. The old world. So I skipped the little like screen modal that pops up over everything and that shows this first blurb. If you're already logged in, then that's just the text that's in the lobby, so we already saw it. But everything is basically the same. We're in here, we have to get the knife. Oops. Once we get the knife, the get trigger get invoked, making you do the follow-up actions. Enter look T, so you can't do anything else unless you do those. Enter east. And so this is a difference, right? Where this doesn't have the auto-equip, and now rather than my knife having already been equipped, as soon as I got it, I am making people learn the wield command. So I'm specifically saying, look, you have to enter wield before you can continue. And I just didn't really like that next step. I wanted the next step after this to be you see danger, right? In this case, it's not, you don't see danger yet, but you sort of feel that like danger is coming if you read the description, which often people don't. And then you're supposed to wield a knife. So then there's kind of this step of friction where you're not going to be asked to wield another weapon for the rest of the introduction, right? And in fact, the other things you're going to have to do is going to be wear armor if you want. And so it was kind of like we were teaching someone the wrong thing at that particular stage, because there's this thing in a lot of MUDs where the wield and the wear command are actually the same internally. You're doing the same thing, which is equipping an item into an equipment slot. But it just reads a lot better to say wield sword rather than wear sword. Like, it's just going to feel differently to the players. And text-based games are all about how the text makes you feel. So we do support that. And we do want people to use wield. You can also say wear sword, by the way. It works in Realms. But it was just kind of an immersion breaker. So I wanted to remove that step. Here, though, it's there. Now, here you can go to the next step. That's interesting that it doesn't scroll down here. I thought I saw that bug also in the main intro. I changed some of the scrolling code recently to fix some issues, and it looks like I introduced a problem with scrolling back down in the intro setting. So I'm going to have to fix that bug. Note to self. Okay, this is the same basic thing where we can't exit. And I was trying to be a little bit more tongue-in-cheek here, but yeah, you really are supposed to kill the spider before you can continue. So this spider is also not very hard. Similar deal, it doesn't fight back. Okay, so now you go here, and now there's this torch. And you don't actually have to go north here. You can just go east and exit. And again, with this first stab at this, I was trying to be more realistic and to try to... There was like a process in my head where I was imagining people asking me, well, how does that work? And I wanted to make sure that I could answer that to these imaginary people. So I was trying here to say, well, if you're going to the outside of a cave, then you're near its mouth, there's more light, you don't need the torch. But if you want to go deeper into the cave, then you need a light to enter the room. And so this is a room check, which is the same mechanism that we saw in the other places. There's a check here that says you cannot enter this room unless the light is in your inventory. And if the light is not in your inventory, then we're telling you you need a light to enter this room. So here we're sort of pretending that we have the mechanics for light and darkness, but we don't. So we're faking it using this room check mechanism, and we don't let people enter unless they have a light. Of course, where you need to get the light is where the spider is, and that's what we want you to kill. But I was finding a lot of people weren't killing the spider. They were just exiting. They didn't really feel like picking up the torch and going there. They were just exiting and then moving on to other things. So I am going to pick up the torch so you can see what else plays out in this encounter. But that was one issue. A lot of people just didn't, and we were demonstrating this mechanism, and then we were not paying it off. So I am going to get the torch, and there's another spider here. The difference is that it hits, it aggroes you and it fights back. And then this one will take you to level 2. So the second introduction we did, you hit level 1 right away. With this one, you had to kill a second mob before you really got your ability. Now there's 2 of them. And they're both level 1, so they're smaller. But this was just kind of a build-up, I guess, before the final fight. But it just kind of felt like a lot of deaths where you really weren't learning anything new. Like, it's not like you had counter at this point and you were learning that if you counter with multiple opponents, they both get hit. You weren't really learning anything else. You were just kind of like progressing through the storyline. And there was still like things to be taught. So once you enter here, now we get the big spider, right? And she's attacking you right away. She's not so hard, actually. You're going to kill her pretty easily. You have a lot more health than her at this point. She's just going to die. And then that was supposed to be like, the completion of why you were there in the first place, right? You enter the cave and it told you that like this spider put you to sleep and you were looking for what happened to that boy, right? That was what I wrote in that introduction paragraph for you are a young adventurer investigating disappearances. So I was eager to pay that off and to say, well, I'm sure every user read that first sentence, they still remember it now, so I better show that, like, that's where that boy was. So that's where the piece of the bear is in here. So in here, there's a bear. There's a carved wooden bear. And the idea is you pick up this bear, and then you're going to give it to the father of the boy who, well, presumably died, because there's no trace of him, just the bear. And that's a little bit grim, right? So your first foray into the world is there's a boy, you were trying to figure out what happened, and you didn't save him. He died. And now you're going to deal with the grief aftermath of it. Which is cool. It's interesting, but we just didn't feel like it would hit as wide of a swath of people trying to get into the platform. But that's what we're doing here. So when you get this, it is associated with the same mechanism of the get trigger that we use in the other world. Where it tells you, so this is an echo, it tells you inspect the intricately chiseled piece of wood in your hands and immediately recognize it as Billy's toy bear that his father carved for him. So talk about telling versus not showing, right? We're just telling the user here, hey, you're recognizing this as that. And in general, this introduction was very prescriptive about who you were, what you noticed, and sort of like what you were doing there. And to make it extra clear that you had to get this, it says that, perhaps bringing him back would give Sam, who's the Billy's father, some solace. So I also think I spell this out in the bear itself. Yeah. This piece of wood, carved in the shape of a bear, belonged to Billy. Bring him back to his father Sam and type give bear Sam. So this is me trying to be like really explicit to the users and say, look, complete this quest. You just have to find this dude named Sam and then give him the bear. Because another way to complete quests, so there's 3 ways to complete quests. You can enter a command. You can say the complete command or any of the command aliases that exist that we defined in the first intro. You can have the quest complete on saying something. So saying the right word and having the right items in your inventory will complete the quest if you configured it that way. And the last one is giving something to the person. So, you have the deer pelt quest, for example. It asks you to give 4 deer pelts. If you give all 4 of them at once to a mob, then that mob will understand that what you did was completing this quest. And this is meant to explain that that's how you complete a quest. So after this, we exit the cave, and we are now in a foresty situation, and you'll notice that there's a path here that already exists. And this uses the same concept that we saw in the introduction of these landmark rooms, which are rooms that are already on your map, even if you haven't visited them. And the reason why I wanted to create this path is that there's more storytelling there. This room tells more story where, you're a young boy in this, right? That's what I said in the beginning intro. So I'm trying to explain, where do you live? Who's your parents? What's your life like? And again, being very concerned with realism, quote unquote, in this first version of the intro, I try to answer that. So this path takes you to a cabin in the forest, which is your home. And you discover here that this is your mother. And she was so worried, and she listens to your story as you tell her about the giant spider. She feels bad for you. And then she tells you to go to Bluefinch because she says that people need to know. Again, so this whole first roll was about, I wanted to justify everything. So I wanted to justify, well, why is it that this person goes from the cave to the village, right? Well, it's because her mother told him that he has to warn people that there are these giant beasts, and why is this happening, right? And then she tells you, remember to get your stuff out of the chest before you go. So this was the first version of the skeleton in the initial intro cave, where you were looting him to increase your armor. And in this case, it was more of a crude way to reward people for having gone through this, having spent and invested this time to go through this introduction rather than just create a character. I wanted to give them something for it. So there's things in this chest. Not only that, they're actually really good items. These are all enchanted items. These are probably better than the stuff you get in the new intro. And if you get them, get all chest, then you can equip them using the work command. So you haven't been exposed to the work command, right? You've only been exposed to the wield command. Oh yeah, right. In this case, you already had equipment. Yeah, so we're just swapping them. You started out with some stuff on you. So these are upgrades. I was hoping that users would hover over these items and then see that they're so much better because they give stats. So all of this was meant to kind of expose to the user the concept of getting stuff from containers, equipping them, upgrading your stuff, all of that. And then this is your house. So you have a cute little cat. I don't know if I should be able to kill the cat. That's weird. But the cat sleeps there, doesn't care about you. So I feel that's pretty realistic. I thought I did pretty well there. But anyways, you still have this bear, right? And if you're someone who is a quest completionist, you're going to want to find the guide. So you're going to explore a little bit. And lo and behold, you don't have to go very far until you're outside of a farm with chickens pecking. And then there is Sam. So Sam is Billy's father. And right now he's very anxious. He paces back and forth across the room, shaking his head slowly from side to side, wondering, oh, Billy, where are you? Well, I know where Billy is. I got his bear. So you can actually complete him by hovering over him and doing complete or doing the complete command. And honestly, what I should do here, if I were to resurrect this, which I won't, I should create a custom completion command here that says give bear Sam, because then it would display that as the name of the command, and it would be a hint that that's what you're supposed to do. Of course, doing that muddies the message that they can use the complete command instead. That's the downside of having multiple ways to do things, is whichever one you teach, it won't be the others. But anyways, if you give the bear to Sam... No, why is Sam not here? That's terrible. I can't interact with him. Complete should work. Okay. Giving him the bear should have worked also, except for some reason he doesn't have any keywords, so I can't interact with him. So then he says, you found the bear, but not the boy. Oh no. So then he listens to the story. Oh no, my poor Billy. He broods in silence. And he says, ugh, this sucks, but I'll give you this knife. I was saving it for him. Here it is. And this knife is much better than your current weapon, right? It's a big upgrade on everything. So the idea is, again, I wanted to pay people off for having spent this time and gone through this story with me. So now you get a better knife. You have a whole set of much better imbued gear. And now the time is The time has come for you to listen to your mother and to go to Bluefinch Village to warn the people about this. I added some flavor here. You don't need to kill any of these, but these are just things that you want to kill if you want to get to a higher level before entering the multiplayer world. And however high level you got, you are that level when you enter the multiplayer, because I like take the character, boom, and then drop it out in the other world. Once you've done that to your heart's content, then you follow the road, right? This is what I was talking about, where rather than just teleport the user right away, we actually make him go through some of the road. And I even considered having the room descriptions here match those of the multiplayer world, because again, I was very concerned about that point of having continuity between the two worlds. So here you can't go anywhere. Here now you're really going towards Bluefinch. Now you're really going towards Bluefinch. You are so close to Bluefinch. You're really close to Bluefinch. In fact, you are nearing the village. Now finally you are there, and it takes you to the multiplayer world. So you don't have to sign up here because we already know who you were, right? I created this character, but we still need a unique name to convert this character into a multiplayer world character. Now, interestingly, because I was already logged in, I already picked a name for this. I forget who I called my character, but I think I picked a name. And if that name were still available, I could probably autofill it there. And, maybe I should, but yeah, did not do that there. Everybody knows. Do not know why. Okay, so this was the first introduction, and it was trying to learn lessons from this that Patrick and we kind of like started from a blank slate, and we created this narrative of we want to create a challenge. We want to feel that the user has overcome something, right? So they face the spider once, then they face it again. This time they kill it. They actually rescue the boy, right? So there's a positive spin on the story rather than just this brood, oh, now this boy died and you have to go grieve with his father. It's a little bit more of a, positive story and hopefully makes people want to move forward. And it really tries to kind of like keep people progressing room by room until we feel that they have learned everything they need to learn. It's definitely not perfect. I think there's a lot of room for improvement. I've in fact highlighted several of them through this, and I'll go and fix a lot of issues that I found. But in general, it's worked out pretty well. People go to the multiplayer world, they know what to do, they advance. Some players advance very quickly, very surprisingly. So overall, I'm pretty happy with it. But it was a lot of work. Just being able to have a world that boots in single player was very difficult. And then creating all these transfer mechanisms, creating the command checks to make sure that a certain command has to be entered before another command can be entered. So this concept of you're gating one command with another command. All of the room checks, basically the room checks that you just saw in the old introduction, they were ported over. There used to be a more crude mechanism before that is now defunct, that all of those were implemented in. And putting the user experience and trying to imagine how they would feel going through it and making sure that they're helped every step of the way is sort of how we went about this process. And again, it's debatable how successful we were. But we put a lot of thought behind every single screen, every single action. How do we know? Initially, we had a problem where you could create a character of any class in the introduction. And the introduction is balanced around warriors. A cleric or a mage entering it and dying, which they were dying, was very problematic. So then we gated it to be only warriors to make sure that we could fully control how much damage you did, how much armor you had, when you were level up, and all of that stuff. So a lot of thinking went into it for sure. Last thing I want to do, I think, is just going to show a couple of even older worlds. So this was the very first world that I built back in 2013 or something like that. Maybe double check something. Where's this going? Yeah, right here. Yeah. Well, this world still works. Let's take a look. Let's see if Rise of the Dead still works. It is, right? I think it might. Some of it will work, I think. A lot of it probably won't. Okay. So for this one, yeah, so you start in a cell, essentially, and I was just kind of working on trying to still trying to just have one action per room, but just it was just a lot more crude, you'll see. So there's only one thing you can do here, which is exit east, and I try to justify it by you're in a cell, the door is barely open, and there's like a candle flickering down there, so where else would you go, right? You have to go east. There's a guard here, and he has a key. See, this doesn't work anymore. So he was supposed to have a key here, and I would have to edit the room checks, but that key would prevent you from exiting the cell unless you get the key from the corpse. And why is the guard dead, right? Well, he's dead because there's this big undead uprising, and you were like sleeping in your cell or something. I don't explain any of this, but that was my rationale. There's this undead uprising, and they've kind of killed everyone around you, so now like your guard is dead, but the key is still in his corpse. So you get the key, and there should be a room check here. Why isn't this working? Oh, I'd already done it. Alright, cool. Or, well, I didn't get feedback though. That might be another bug. The issue with this was kind of the same, that like we were sort of introducing a door and key mechanic, and by doing that we were sort of promising something, but there are no doors and keys mechanics in Realm, so it was kind of a false promise, and it was the very first thing we were starting with, so it was kind of problematic. And then here we were just trying to reward exploration. If you explored, you would see a chest, and then that chest had a pair of old shoes. Fat loot, right? And I believe that what that old shoes did is they just give you more stamina. So I was trying to do a metaphor there of, look, you have good shoes, so you can walk further. So you get now 10 stamina instead of just 100. And the second that you get out of the manor, woo is scary. Someone attacks you right away. He's a zombie because he's undead, and that's very scary. So you have to stay there, kill the zombie, which takes a while because you are hardly doing any damage, doing no damage. And he's not doing much of any damage either, so that takes forever. I thought he started with a weapon. Maybe not. Maybe not. He doesn't have anything, and then there's another zombie, who cares? And once you're outside the manor, there's a graveyard. This is, you go back to one down up here when you die. You enter the city. There's kind of more experiencing you can do here. I think these guys were supposed to have a little bit of armor. They don't anymore, but I think each of them had a little bit of armor, and he had even more armor, and he was, back then, Bash was the only way to sort of sit down someone who was very dodgy, and he was basically impossible to kill unless you bashed, and Bash would do 60% damage or something like that. Sorry. Bash had a 65% chance of succeeding. And so you were just kind of kept doing it until you set him down, and once you set him down, he had very low health. So it was meant to teach someone that they had to use Bash to kill him. But it was just kind of a lesson that no one really learned because it was difficult to learn. First encountering a bridge where you have to go up to change your plane and go over something. And then there were basically like more... oh yeah, right. So then finally you find this guard tower. This is where the weapons were. There we go. The fat loot. This weapons rack has actual upgrades. And if you wield this sword, now you're actually going to be able to do some decent damage. And if you keep exploring, you will eventually, because the world there's some sickly animals, right? Because this is like an undead plague. So the boar is limping, and there's trees that are attacking you, like weird stuff. and then there's like poison spiders that hit really hard, and eventually you go into a cave, and the cave is supposed to be the root of the evil. So now the bats are already level 6, they would destroy me right now. You get to this really, really creepy cave where there's bats and ghouls and all this stuff. And then you enter here, and there's the necromancer priest, who is really like the whole reason for all of this. And killing him is hard because he uses abilities, and he has a certain script that he executes. And this was the first world that I built. It was actually like decently big for how much work it took, I guess, but I really learned a lot building it. And this one, I think, was the first world, where that's all that there is. And you start out at an old temple. It's funny, when you do storytelling, and when you're trying to introduce people to a game that they have no idea what it is, you always kind of, I mean, I don't know, I feel like you always want to start with a big tragedy or something really bad happened. So, you know, in this case, you enter, and right away it's ruins, and everything has been knocked over, with the chandeliers and bookshelves and the benches are everywhere, and there's been a violent struggle, and the thing becomes about, you're hoping that the users are going to read this and figure out what happened here, how can I figure this out. And some users will do that, but a lot of users won't. So you want to create something that will, you know, appeal to as broad a swath of users as possible when it's the first thing they're experiencing when coming into your platform. But these were sort of my first attempts of trying to think through, okay, how do I make someone interested in the world? How do I make them progress? How do I make them go to one room, kill the mob, make them feel like killing the mob was worth it, while not like forcing them to do so necessarily, and giving them some like freedom to explore and come to those realizations on their own. I think there's inherently always a lot of optimism when you first build a game that people are going to be super into it and go and find all the Easter eggs that you left, and follow all of your rationale and reasons for doing so. And we just found that you need more hand holding, especially at the beginning. And like I was talking about at the very beginning of the stream, that Super Mario introduction really resonated with me, where, like, you know, in each screen, each section, just make sure that there's one thing they can do and one thing only, and they can't progress until they do it, while, if possible, not making that be a frustrating experience, making it be a rewarding experience that they've tackled something difficult. And yeah, we were very, very deliberate with redoing our intro. So this is kind of all the state of all of the intros, and of introducing the intros. The tutorial is something else that's also introduction-like, that honestly needs updating. But that one is a little bit more, rather than trying to like put someone in an immersive setting where, you know, we're pretending that it's a real world and they're having real emotions. The tutorial is really like we're speaking to the users as if we were a game manual. This is kind of like an early substitute for help, where the first thing you see is, this is a room, it's the spatial unit in the game, and all you can do here is go east. So we're telling them, hey, go east. This could also benefit from the little jumpy call out, telling them to go east. And basically each room in here, we're just telling the users a bunch of stuff that's not even remotely, you know, immersive or ingrained in any kind of like fantasy world. It's just instructions. So here you have to go east, and you can also do it with either the keyboard, or you can do it by clicking the room when you're clicking the room, right? Here we're trying to introduce people to the concept of a mob. So all this is very prescriptive. Enter look man, hover over it with your mouse. It's not killing quite yet. And once you've done that, like, all you can do is go east, obviously. And yeah, each room essentially continues to explain one thing, and then when there are multiple directions we can go, then we actually introduce different directions. So here we say the direction is always go east to learn something new, and if you want to drill more into whatever you were already learning, then go either north or south. So here you're being introduced to a rock, right? Where we say get rock, look at your inventory, drop rock. If you want to keep learning about different things, you can go east, or if you want to keep learning more about items, you go north. Then you have more information on that. You have a man here who has an entrance reaction that as soon as you enter, he gives you a piece of log. And then you give a piece of log back to him. He gives it back to you. So it's an infinite cycle, right? Which is why he says, thanks, we could do this all day. I'm trying to be funny. Here we try to teach people about containers. So in here there's a book. You can get the book from the container. You can put the book back into the container. Again, it's more in-depth information about that topic. Next topic is equipment. Similar deal. You do get all, where all, etc. It may be useful to disable auto equip in the tutorial, because we're telling people to enter get all and where all, and then we're doing it for them. So that's a bit counterproductive. I think we should do that. And since they've learned about equipment and they've picked up some crap weapons, now we're hoping to teach them that like these are better, and you can see hovering over them that they are better quality, and now based on their qualities, you know, they're worth picking up. This one will give you 15 more dex even if it has no more damage. This one, because it's enchanted, will actually give you more damage than its non-enchanted equivalent. So we're trying to introduce these concepts. Of course, in doing that, we're also giving you one useless one, but that's fine. And yeah, helmet or heavy armor, which give a lot of armor. And finally, we introduce the concept of two-handed weapons, of shields, where two-handed weapons just make you hit harder, and shields increase your resilience significantly. Then we do more to talk about mobs. So if you want to, this sort of, I guess this is somewhat repetitive to the section on mobs that is 2 rooms west, but it just has more depth. So this is an example of a mob reacting to something you say. So you say snake, the mob gets scared. There's a bug here. This merchant's supposed to have wares, but currently merchants do not spawn in single player worlds. I know about this bug. I will prove it. It's on the Trello board. It's somewhere. There we go. Of the tutorial. In the tutorial, merchants are not loading in single player worlds. I will fix that for sure. But it's meant to teach you buy, sell, and all that stuff. And there's kind of a joke there where I'm pretty sure the item... no, that's not the one. Never mind. Okay. Combat. So first we're teaching fleeing. We're here. You're supposed to kill your practice partner. And then we want you to flee. Down here, we want to teach people that mobs sometimes have things that are valuable, like in this case, a pair of antlers. Don't know how valuable that is, but it is something. And here, we are teaching people about the fact that some mobs will aggro you as soon as you enter the room. So the mouse attacks you immediately. And then if you attack one of the plain-looking men, the other will assist him. Supposedly. So that doesn't work either. I have to fix that. Okay. Out of date. Out of date, but explains that you know, there's all these shortcuts that you can use. It might be better for this actually to have a section on just aliasing in general. Quests. So we are introducing the concept of quest here. This guy has an inquire, and we tell you to do inquire, or EN. and he's looking for his glasses, so he can't see anything without them. So he can't find his glasses because he doesn't have his glasses on. If you have glasses, you know how infuriating this is. So he dropped him somewhere to the south. Oh my god, there's a pair of glasses here. So you're going to pick them up. And you can either give them by doing the complete command, or you can just give them to him. So this is what was broken in the other introduction, but it works here, where you give him the item and he understands that means complete the quest. Anyway, so this is a back and forth. That's meant to be someone making sure that you want to hear a riddle before he asks you to what the answer is. So you say what riddle, and he will look at the word riddle. He will tell it to you. I don't remember the answer to this. That's funny. I remember there's a trick though. The match? Is it? Yeah, that worked. Yeah, you're meant to wonder whether to light this, or that, but really the joke is, well, you gotta have the match before you do the thing. And so this is a mob who has 2 quests, right? So his first quest was for you to say match, basically, was the qualifying condition for it to be complete. It had a reaction, so that if you said riddle, then it would give you the content of it. And now, since it had 2 quests, the first quest has been completed, the second quest is now available, and he asks you another one, and this is the same deal. He's just looking for a word. I believe the word's tomorrow. Yeah, that's right. I actually had a lot of fun writing these. And this just says you can repeat these. You can repeat the quests. Communications. There's a new one here, which is gossip. Gossip lets you talk to other people on the Grapevine network. It's pretty cool. So we do have a section on aliasing. That's nice. This section is out of date, and we now have proper game help, which we didn't when we did this, so we should probably have this point to the help folder instead. And then that's it. You have completed the tutorial. So these are all of the introduction and the tutorial are how we try to explain to people how to use this platform and how to interact with the worlds. And then they go into the multiplayer worlds, and hopefully they go forth, prosper, and slay many things. So I think that's it for today. I think that was a pretty good session. Tentatively Thursday, I'm going to try to do a build your own world episode where I'm going to build a new world from scratch. So it's going to be sort of like a demonstration of how the world editor works and how you can go from nothing to some kind of a quest. And I think what I'm going to try to do is just have a knight with a tower and a dragon and a princess. And the knight will have to kill the dragon before he can rescue the princess. So this will be really totally novel, never been done before, but I think it will be really nice and neat and be a good episode. And I think it'll be a good first step for me to start doing instructional videos on how to use the world editor. And I'm hoping that if the episode's really good, it can be the first one, or otherwise it can just be a practice for me to start doing that. So that's Thursday at 3. And thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you next time.